And greetings, glory and honor to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It says in the Bible, grace to all those who love Jesus Christ with an undying love. This channel is organized to be very nerdy for a place of Christian nerds to meet, science nerds to meet each other and just nerd out and fellowship. So anyone who's joining us from our visit to see Dr. Sanford give a extremely rare live appearance on the internet. Thank you for joining us. So Emery, we'll just hang out for a little bit and just kind of chill.
Yep. Well, yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I didn't have much else to do on my Wednesday night, so I figured I'd drop in, and I definitely wanted to listen to Dr. Sanford's show because I know he doesn't speak very often. He's not getting any younger. Not trying to be rude, but I mean he's not getting any younger. So I understand public speaking is a little bit more difficult than it used to be. So anytime he's doing something live, I definitely want to at least show up and see what he has to say. And from then on, we can just talk about the things he brought up. So I'm sure there's some very interesting things that Sal has to comment on because of course Sal knows a whole lot better than I do. But I'll make backseat driver comments as we move along.
Okay, so I can't believe Chilo found this website. This is a nerd place. Mm-hmm. There is, for those who don't know, I have another channel called Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith. I just dropped it in the link, and I'm also going to pin it. Oops. I'm going to pin it. Let me pin this. I'm going to pin it. So Chilo, I hope you like that one more. That's a little more accessible. This channel is just kind of like, yeah, I think it's torturous.
He defines several of the videos on his channel as nerd torture sessions.
Yes.
This is where we don't define terms. We just stick our heads deep in the sand and see what comes out. When we talk on Sal's other channel, we try to be a little bit more accessible.
Yes, absolutely. And so that one, we just released a video on Charles Duke and just encourage people to be just blessed. I thought, now I didn't announce this. I avoided announcing publicly what the actual show was because I figured if I put something up and says after show Dr. Sanford live, who might be jumping on that channel, and I just didn't want them there.
Yeah, it would have been a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it would have been terrible. We would have had, if we had some of the garbage that we normally see on the internet, like say from the modern day debate crowd.
No thanks.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised Zachary Klein is there, just in passing. We'll talk about that backstage.
Yeah, I think he might have been moderating.
Yeah. So.
Not surprised. But anyway, at any rate,
yeah.
The show itself, I think, was probably more accessible than what we're going to say, to be perfectly honest.
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize, although it is amazing to see him go to communicate in that mode. Because if you have a copy of the BINP, the Biological Information New Perspective?
I do not. I didn't know that book existed until tonight, so I'm going to have to get myself a copy.
Oh man, I'm upset. I gave a whole bunch to our mutual friend, the Martin family.
Yeah.
And short announcement. I'm building a new website, and it's called 252.org, and it's part of the section is specifically to help creationists like the Martins. They requested my assistance to, for some more, more technical stuff, and resources that they could use. So I'm very honored to do that. But Dr. Sanford sent me boxes, shelves full of BIP, and that's the acronym for that book. And I gave it mostly away because I was trying to clean up the house. I gave all of it to the Martins, so I think people have consumed it. So I feel really bad now. I should have saved some for you, brother.
That's all right. I can buy it. It's not going to kill me.
So let me say greetings to Godzilla Freak. Can I make him a mod? Let's see. I'm going to make you a mod because you're a mod on my other channel. You are a mod now at God. Congratulations. Okay, so we ought to be able to clamp down on the spam bots. So where were we? Yes, so the BIP. But if you've read that, oh my goodness, it's as impenetrable as a lot of the stuff you see on this channel in Nerd Torture.
Yeah. Well, when they actually read my comment saying that, hey, I want to get a copy of that book. That was the comment of the book, and they were saying, yeah, it's not real accessible. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm sitting here reading population genetics literature. Like, if I'm can slog my way through that, I could probably slog my way through Michael Behe and William Dembski and John Sanford.
I'd say the section that probably some of the more impenetrable stuff was actually in the paper we wrote for the Springer Nature.
Mm-hmm.
That was Bill Basner. He's a mathematician.
Straight math, yeah, straight math.
I seem to remember something about a homework assignment, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It actually came in handy.
So for the record, Sal has not let me live this down. I was taking an evolutionary genetics class for my master's, and it involved some heavy math in the way things were being calculated. And I got so lost in it, I basically sent Sal a message and said, hey, can you help me figure this out? Because I haven't got the faintest clue what I'm doing. And so we spent, 2.5, 3 hours of sitting in StreamYard, just like working through math problems. And we worked through like one.
Yeah, and it's like, can I see what you're trying to describe? And you have to hold up his book and take photographs. It's like, oh, that's what it is. And then after all of that, it's like, what is this describing? And I realized, oh, sickle cell anemia. But, it's really scary. In the joint chapter that I wrote with Bill Basner, John Sanford, Alda Hoster, the stuff that Bill put, I could barely understand. Oh my goodness. That just kind of knocked me to the floor. It was so hard. I was like, yeah, that's a retired professor of mathematics for you, like I'm not exactly shabby either, but that was hard.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And math is not my cup of tea to start with. So like I'm sitting here slogging through population genetics and going, oh my goodness, this hurts. This just hurts.
So if I may venture to let me see if I could actually dredge this up here, because it was beautiful to actually hear Dr. Sanford talk in the way. So I think the thing that was really compelling, it just occurred to me when I was typing in the comment section.
Mm-hmm.
I've known people that were not Christians who studied cell biology who became Christians because they said only God could have done this.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he was talking about all the things that Darwin didn't know, and he's focused on cell, he did mention about cell biology and the nature of life, that it is complex. In Darwin's time, his view of life was very, very simplistic, pathetically simplistic. And I also realized, do you know of anyone that became a Christian because they studied evolutionary biology? I don't know a single one.
Not offhand. Cell biology, yes. Molecular biology, yes. Biochemistry, yes. Just about physics, yes. Just about every field except evolutionary biology.
Evolution. In fact, I think evolutionary biology, if even just classes on it, we know Michael Shermer became a Darwinist, lost his faith because of it. Lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's poisonous. It's a substitute religion.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, some of them, when they're a little more honest, will admit that. Now, Michael Roos has rued the day he admitted that evolution was actually functioning as a religion for at least some people, and he's tried to walk it back. But even his walking it back said, yeah, it's a religion in a certain sense. So they some of them know this. Some of them realize that that's what this is. But there are some scientific aspects to it as well, which is where it gets difficult, because you have to split out the, okay, well, we have changes in allele frequency. That's actually an observable fact, and spit that out and get rid of the rest of the garbage, which is all the other attached assumptions and suppositions related to that. And I love that Dr. Sanford was saying was talking in the presentation about how phylogenetics is a giant waste of time.
You could waste your whole career on it.
I know. I think you can. You can. I know of people who have literally done basically nothing other than phylogenetics. I've read their books and read their papers. It's boring. But the underlying philosophy, I mean, there's actually a paper where I found a quote from somebody who literally said that we assume that evolution is true to prove that evolution is true, as part of his phylogenetic work. Like, this is nutso stuff. The only people who believe this are cultists. And to be fair, though, to the phylogeneticists, there are a lot of phylogeneticists who would reject that interpretation. Okay, so there are a lot of phylogeneticists who would reject that interpretation, but I'm trying to be fair to them. So,
I was just trying to. They're somewhat obnoxious here. Goodbye. I disposed of him. I know that was mean. Actually, I enjoyed it. Good riddance. So, I was just quickly Googling to see, there was an article where they said, we will never know the origin of eukaryotes, but we're going to keep studying it. And I was just laughing. And like, then, what's the, at that point, this is just like religious belief. You can't possibly, you have no hope of proving it, but you're going to just keep wandering in the dark. And I was quickly Googling for it. So yeah, go ahead, waste your life on it. So the highlight for me, I think, was also at the very end. He was sharing how, that question. If Darwin knew about DNA, do you think he'd have changed his mind? And Dr. Sanford said, it's not about just, deciding you're not going to be an evolutionist someday. He said, God has to do something in your life. And he did something for me. I thought that was the most beautiful moment of the whole thing. He said, God has to touch your life. And
And I think that's a fair understanding of most atheists. Not to be rude to the atheists, but most atheists don't care one jot about evidence. They've made up their minds, and nothing is going to change it unless they effectively get slapped upside the head like Dr. Sanford was.
yeah. And I mean, this is public knowledge. He in the court records. So I have to be careful with, when I have to filter out if I say something about him, it has to be something that I've seen in public records.
Mm-hmm.
And even before I met him, the thing that compelled me, he said he was a theistic evolutionist, then an old Earth creationist, then a young Earth creationist, and it was a transformation of about 10 years. And that seems about right. I've known Christians that have had a phase of theistic evolutionism and then become creationists. So to me, that was my favorite part. I'm so glad that the side chat wasn't swarmed by the riff raff. That's why I wasn't advertising this after show and then linking over to it. I didn't even want people Googling to look for it.
Understandable.
So let's see what else. So Darwin didn't have the nature of life correct. He wasn't a great scientist. He was pathetic.
No, his science was really bad. I actually think Dr. Sanford may have been a little bit, and this is because Dr. Sanford is a nice person, may have been a little bit too nice to Darwin. And that's the only criticism I can offer, is he was probably too nice to Darwin, because Darwin's books, they're not interesting. They're boring. They're dense. Part of that is the Victorian prose, but part of it is he's saying garbage and empty nothings.
Yeah. And people think he was a great scientist. I just laugh.
Yeah. Half the papers in evolutionary biology start out with some form of Darwin said this. Like, it's nutso. This is crazy. Like, Einstein doesn't get the kind of worship in physics papers that Darwin does in evolutionary biology papers. And Einstein may actually have been right.
There is a joke. Darwin is regarded as God or even higher by some biologists, and it's hilarious. He also said I was pleased. He's the first that was so bold to say. I mean, he's the first person that ever said to me, Origin of Species is a terrible book. And I said, I thought so too. The prose is just impenetrable. It's like, I've read things from like pre-Victorian prose. Mm-hmm. Like if you read,
I've read Dickens and I didn't find him impenetrable.
Who? Charles
Dickens. Like he was slightly pre-Victorian, and like I didn't find him difficult to read.
Oh, Cicero, Roman times. Well, I'm just like,
I've read Polybius. I read it front to back when I was a teenager. And if you don't know who Polybius is, he was the primary historian of the ancient world. I read it front to back when I was a teenager, both volumes. Loved it. It was great. It was interesting. Darwin is junk.
Yeah. I'm just like, what's your point?
And even the thing is, even his letters, like I've read some of Darwin's letters for research purposes. I've been looking for things and so on in there. Even his letters are verbose and relatively vapid. Like
vapid
he writes like a philosopher.
Oh, okay. Vapid. I haven't heard that word. You know what? You're the first person to use that word that I know in more than 40 years. Congratulations. It's been 43 years since I've heard that word.
Oh dear.
But I'll tell you why it sticks out in my mind, because when I first saw it, I said, wow, what does that mean? And my friend was really into dictionary type language, and it's like, okay. And that was the only one that I remember. It just stuck out. So Hey, this is the first in 43 years. Vape it. Well done.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, because I made I made a joke of it very, very rapidly. I mean, like Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, kids joke. Yeah.
That's probably why I remembered it. Oh, before we move on to the next topic, this was what I said kind of broke me right here. This is Bill Basner. That's Basner and Sanford. And why did I bring that up? I was saying that it was wonderful to hear John kind of in this mode where it wasn't technical. It was so refreshing. Yes. So God bless you guys. So good to see you all. So Malthus. So yeah, it was so okay. So Darwin was a terrible writer. I found something that was kind of alarming. And this was an informal presentation, not with references, but some of the things Dr. Sanford said, it's like I wish I could get the reference to that, where he said that Darwin was encouraged to be a clergyman because then he'd be set for life. Not that he believed it. So even in that time, it seemed like, popularity contest, you just be a clergyman to make a living, not that you really believe it.
Well, that was actually relatively common. So I know a little bit about the Church of England history at this point. That was relatively common. It was one of the things that would be done for a son of a gentleman's family, and Darwin's father was considered a high enough rank in society that he was a gentleman. He wasn't like titled or anything, but he was considered a gentleman. He was, because he was a doctor, and so he was considered, relatively well in society. He was educated. He was somebody who people would look at with, hey, this person's intelligent. This person is somebody in society. He's a somebody. And so children of gentlemen who were not fit for anything else were often put into the clergy because for that very purpose, because it was a respectable life. It wasn't hard labor. They could study whatever it was they wanted to study, and just give a lecture on Sundays at whatever clerical posting they went to. It was not much of a lot of the postings were largely sinecures, and also a lot of these posts would have had a curate, and the curate underneath the actual minister, the actual reverend of the parish, would have done a lot of the actual hard work. They would have been a young man getting into the ministry. So Darwin would have had to have done that for probably, if he'd gone into ministry, probably 2-3 years max. Most curates went into it because they didn't have any money. Darwin's family had money, so he probably could have skipped a lot of the curate stage. But a lot of ministers, unless they had a large congregation or they were actually like legitimate Christians, minimal work. It was an easy job for people who wanted to do like their own field studies.
And I mean, but why would people finance it? Is it part of the social? Is it kind of
part of the social thing? You went to church on Sunday. There had to be somebody there to give a lecture. And maybe if his curate came around when you were sick or whatever, you formed a good opinion of it. And of course, he married you, he buried you. And of course, the Church of England liturgy is very similar in some ways to the Catholic liturgy. So the church had a large sway over the people. I'd also add that Darwin himself came from a family that was Unitarian. They were not proper Church of England members. His grandfather, of course, was an atheist. His uncle Wedgwood was a Unitarian. His wife was a Unitarian. He himself probably never really had any firm religious convictions. His father didn't really seem to have any either. So his family, his religious background, when we say that he was religious, it was in the vaguest possible sense. And by going to Cambridge and studying for the ministry, he was kind of sort of outside the actual accepted Church of England. So it's probably some of the stuff he signed to get into Cambridge probably wasn't true, or at least he was straining a point to get in, because there were no places to get educated as a Unitarian minister in England. You had to go to Cambridge or some one of the other schools to get a ministerial education.
Okay. And I apologize to the audience, especially those who would watch the show. This is relevant to me because I have been very disturbed that it seems that a lot of the ministers throughout the land, it's just a job to them at this point. Mm-hmm. Do they really believe it? And for a long time, I thought, I have my doubts. To them, this is like, they believe it in the sense when you're acting out, an actor acting out a role. For the moment, they'll get into the character, and then it's not really them.
Mm-hmm. And in the age of social media, it's a lot easier to expose them for not actually being real than it would have been in Darwin's day. In Darwin's day, if there was a scandal, it would be hushed up, and he'd be moved to some other portion of England where nobody knew him, and it would be all fine.
Well, again, this relates also to the Catholic Church. With, if there's a scandal, move them to another parish.
Yep.
Whereas it's like, if I were the congregant, he needs to go to jail, be expelled permanently.
Yep.
And
back then, their definition of scandal was a little bit different. Back then, it may have just been as simple as, he said something that offended the largest merchant in the village or whatever, because they cared about money back then too. Or maybe, and this, of course, is disqualifying for ministry, but maybe he got caught having an affair with a congregant's wife or something. It wouldn't necessarily go to a type of go to jail offense, but it would have been something where he couldn't continue to minister in that particular town.
Right. So I guess, and I'll try to get back on track here. It has profoundly disturbed me that we have many people that they're just putting on an act, and it's a great source of revenue. And it has broken my heart to find out that people can be that vile and empty, that they just do this. I couldn't live with myself doing that. I mean, if someone said, hey, we're going to pay you a good job, just give the Muslim or Hindu literature, I'm just like, no way.
Yeah.
This is like lying. This is like, and I don't know. To me, this is just so alien that this was commonplace. And I'm sad to say, as I've read stories of ministers that they had no other job. They became apostate in heart. And they said, well, what else am I going to do? So they just keep doing it so they could stay employed. They didn't know what else they could do. And you're just now a whitewashed tomb. So all of this is revealing, and what you told me just now is probably worth another show, honestly, as I'm dealing with, issues about the Christian faith. And that's why this was just a random conversation. Someone said, and I got this secondhand, but I have every reason to believe it. He said, persecution, a little persecution is actually kind of good for the church. And I get the spirit of that kind of not getting the social rewards. I mean, you can disagree, but that's fine.
Well, there's positives and negatives to both sides, because if it's socially acceptable to be an Orthodox Christian, we don't have kids getting their private parts mutilated by surgeons.
Yep. So
there are positives and negatives to having a cultural acceptance of Christianity. The positives being that a lot of behavior that is unseemly, like we currently have going on in our world today, is restrained or eliminated, because it's not acceptable to be doing that in public. Because now it may still go on in private in certain places. You'll probably still have it. You'll still have adultery. You'll still have theft. You'll still have bad things happening, but they'll have to go undercover, and they'll be harder to do, and they'll be less acceptable to the general society. However, in a place where cultural Christianity is not acceptable, when it actually costs you something to be a Christian, it makes for more genuine converts.
Yeah.
So it's a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Like, I mean, Christianity as a culture, as a cultural force, is beneficial to the overall culture, but the church itself is probably benefited more by there being at least a slight cost to being a genuine Christian.
Yes. So now we can. I don't remember all the 7 points yet. Oh, the fossil record, that was interesting. There are some things I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
I was impressed that Dr. Sanford was definitely communicating to a Christian audience,
Mm-hmm.
in saying this, the age of the earth was not the belief of the Bible. So he definitely was. He was talking a lot about for the audience, that your starting position is your Christian viewpoint, and so he made reference to Darwin being kind of the biggest engine of atheism. He lost his soul. He was tormented, and that was very interesting. There's a lot known about his sickness.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very strange person. So that struck me, and he said maybe 1 billion souls have been lost.
More than that.
It's the greatest engine of atheism. So I never framed it in those terms, but that really made me want to fight evolutionism more, because it's a pathetic theory as far as science.
Understatement of the year.
By evolutionism, I really mean, the complexity arises naturally.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about common descent, I get it, that there's these hierarchical relationship, and that has troubled me for a very long time up until recently. So I'm a little bit softer on that. But some of the things that they say, I just like, now that I know more about biology than I did before I started working for Dr. Sanford, I just laugh now. So it makes me kind of really despise Swami Das even more. Sorry. as if that's possible.
Let's ban colleges from talking about creation. Let's do that. Let's do that, Narcidas. Let's do that.
So I mean, and I've said this. I said, you theistic evolutionists, before you say that it's absolutely true that theistic evolutionist is God's truth, you better be 100 million% sure, because it says in the Bible, it's better for a millstone to be hung around your neck and be cast into the sea than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. So you better be 100%, million% sure. And I know they can't be. Why? Because I've asked them. I asked even Aaron Ra. I said, can you tell me the origin of any major protein family?
Well, asking Aaron Ra to tell you the origin of anything is like asking a wall to talk.
Yeah. So, or you could ask anyone. It was really terrible. James Tour was calling out Swami Das on, Swami Das's endorsement of the RNA world. I just like, Swami Das, you're talking to someone that is a synthetic organic chemist. He knows this stuff.
Yeah,
My point is, go on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, my point is, unless you're 100 million% sure, you're causing Christians to stumble by saying this is good science. That's my simple point. You better be 100 million% sure, because a lot of people lose their faith. Like I said, I've not known one person that studied evolutionary biology and it converted them from atheism to Christianity. That should be sobering. I do know many who've said evolutionary biology made them lose their faith. So before you start promoting it as gospel truth, you better be 100,000,000% sure. Because
you better actually think about that before you open your mouth and say, well, we can just add evolution into the Bible. It's not a problem. Like, yeah, it kind of is. Just kind of. But home out. So anyway, sorry, snark is over.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat yourself? I was distracted.
Oh, I apologize. No. So I was just being snarky, and I said something along the lines of, you better be very sure of yourself before you can just add evolution into the Bible and say everything's fine. It just might cause a few problems. Just a couple. Here and there, a few.
Now okay. Just speaking as an old Earth creationist, because I fight the science a lot of old Earth creationism at this point in my life, and I got to hand it to him. It's a good fight. Been in some tough debates over this, tough debates over the Big Bang, etc. And it's it's a much more difficult case. So I've often said, I do view the old Earth creationists by and large as my friends. The theistic evolutionists, I'm just like, is there anything that you have that actually agrees with experimental science? That you don't have to use equivocation and just distortion to make your theory work. Mm-hmm. And so, though I disagree with the old Earth creationists, at least they're following the evidence where it leads for the most part. Whereas these evolutionists, even when new evidence comes to mind, they just don't reconsider. It's like, there's no problem for evolution. It's like, dude, might as well get a bot to just say that. No matter whatever we present, it's no problem for evolution. Oh, by the way, let me add creation biology as a standard moderator. So let me say this.
I almost said something about that earlier, Sal, when you added Godzilla Freak as a mod. I'm like, man, you're not gonna add me as a mod? What's going on here?
Well, I'm sorry. I knew you by another name.
Yeah, I know. I'm griefing, Sal. I do not care. Yay, mod powers. Now who do I go ban?
So, yes, Ryan, I'm really sorry Dr. Sanford never got back to you, but he has a bazillion people. And, I hardly ever, it's really hard. Even when I was a paid employee, it was hard to get a hold of him. So please don't take it personally. I'm glad you've gotten to meet some really fine individuals like Emery, and now you're meeting Tim Clary. I don't know. Okay, so I'm presuming you're geographically closer to the Discovery Institute than you are to Dallas. That's great. So there's some very fine people in the Discovery Institute. So
just so maybe make Sal's point a little bit for him. Ryan, just imagine the fact that just think about the fact that you want to talk to Dr. Sanford and multiply that by about 500 other people in your position, and then keep in mind he's at whatever age he is, which is not young, still actively researching, and then realize he can't respond to everybody.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate, but that's what it is.
Exactly. He has like 130 publications, and I looked at all his co-authors, like 60 different co-authors. Can you imagine building a relationship with 60 people that you've worked with? So he has all these people that he's worked with at Cornell. Logos Research Associates had like 70 people that knew him personally. Okay. I think you get the point. It starts to add up.
Yeah.
and he had new um, he had new staff working for him now. Carrie Mullins, and then it was Chris Roop, myself, Rob Carter, Wes Brewer, Chris Roop, and then Bridget Heap, Francine Smith. So even in retirement, he has a staff of 10 people.
Keep in mind, he's officially retired. And this is what he's doing in his retirement.
Yeah. So, greetings, Mark. So I just, I mean, I think he sometimes will go in this mode. He just wants to shut off and he won't contact anyone. And I think I called him like 3 times over the course of 3 weeks and didn't get a call back. And I'm like, Doc, I'm a paid employee here. And then, I have a brief conversation, say, yeah, you're doing fine. So I'll just keep going on. It's like, thanks. So, so just to reassure you, okay, so the fossil record, I like the way he treated the coelacanth.
Coelacanth.
And the phylogeny cartoons. There is definitely a hierarchy there, but
there's a hierarchy, but it's highly generalized. There are a lot of exceptions to the hierarchy and things that don't fit where they're supposed to fit.
So it was really good. He had the eukaryotes and prokaryotes and how that was a mess. The morphology is actually pretty compelling because that is a problem, the morphology, because you have these body plans. That really is an issue. There's like, okay, can I ask a dumb question? Maybe, Paleologos would know this. Hey, Peter, okay, what kind of skeletons do mammals have? Is that an endoskeleton? That is
an endoskeleton cell.
Okay, so you have ones with an exterior skeleton. That's an exoskeleton. All right, now you know I'm not a morphology guy. What's the common ancestor of something with an exoskeleton and an endoskeleton? It just, that's kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. Or you look at the architecture, the body plan of a starfish with the other kinds of fish. I'm just like,
Sal, starfish aren't fish.
Oh, they aren't? Oh, no, see,
they're invertebrates. Sal, they're invertebrates.
Okay, I learned something. See, I'm gonna embarrass myself when I talk outside of that field of biology. Thank you. Okay, so this was all right. This was worth the whole conversation because I never focused on morphology that much. Not because I didn't think it was a good argument. I just felt the cellular argument would be more powerful, and I've never been challenged on that. And Ryan said, "Gee, it's too bad." I think it was Ryan. He said, "It's too bad Darwin didn't know there's no common ancestor for all proteins." And I was laughing. Someone said that. So we covered common ancestry, the tree of life, and then natural selection. Finally, the last part was natural selection doesn't work the way we think. And I like the way he broke it down because when Randy Galuzza called me into his office, we had a conversation. It's more like a very polite argument.
It was a passionate discussion.
Yeah, and at the end I said, okay, look, maybe we can try to figure out how to assign terms to such things, because I said, definitely they're random mutations. You have radiation, you have no idea where it's going to hit the genome. That is definitely a random mutation. we have steric, any sorts of steric influences. You can't run away from that. So, now let's try to classify it. I said, what kind of language would satisfy you that, we're not going to be bumping heads over this? I said, in that classification of, well, we'll have to rewind the tape, that there are some quote unquote design mutations, etc. And then that was the start. I independently arrived in my discussion with Dr. Randy. Okay, can we just try to compartmentalize this? Because clearly there are random mutations. And he said, how do you know it wasn't designed? I said, look.
Because it kills you.
Yeah. So he's a very forceful personality. And I said, I think the way to deal with him is to be in person and just to stand up and say, I think that's problematic. And we just talked through it. And I said, okay, look, you have the eye. Your optics are optimized. This is basic physics. There's really only a very narrow set of conditions where you have the light focused. And that's well-defined in geometric optics. So therefore, if you have random changes, like say radiation hitting your eye or the developmental cells or whatever it is, the probability is you're going to deviate. It's going to cease to function. He said, oh, yeah, I didn't mean that. And then I started going to all these other ones. And I'm like, okay, so we have to work out the language. And he was I think I could say this. He was not happy about Darwin Devolves. It's like, I thought that was a really good book. So, there's a lot to work through with the CET model. Because I actually thought Darwin Devolves was a great book. And I said, how about gene loss? He said, how do you know it's not designed? I'm just like, okay. Oh my goodness. If gene loss is now considered potentially functional, I'm just like, okay, this is going to be hard. So that's what we're working with. And these are conversations we need to work through. Definitely in bacteria, there is pressure to lose genes.
Bacteria, though, because they have small population sizes and rapid reproduction, pressure to lose genes is something that can be responded to very quickly. Whereas in something that takes a long time to reproduce, like an elephant, well, I'm sorry, gene loss there, you can put as much pressure on it as you want. It takes an elephant, 10, 12 years to mature or something like that? Or maybe a blue whale would be an even better example. Like, I don't care how much pressure there is. It's going to take a long time to respond to that pressure. And bacteria takes minutes.
Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily say the population is well adapted.
Well adapted to what?
Yeah. Adapted to the current environment. You're so specialized. You get a fluctuation in the environment and you could be toast.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is the thing. Yeah. The way that I frame it is, and it even says this in Lenski's 2017 paper with lead author Cauchy, it lost versatility. Versatility means you can operate in different environments. When I'm so specialized in this environment, you're the most reproductively successful. That is not necessarily good because you've lost versatility. You become so specialized. So that means you're good at doing one thing. When
right,
you may encounter environments
we can illustrate this really easily with parasitic or a lot of parasitic organisms, because a lot of them are hyper specialized to a particular host, and this is because they've effectively dumped huge chunks of their genome that allow them to would allow related organisms to eat non-parasitically. So they're hyper-specialized to a particular host. Their genome's gotten a whole lot smaller, and they're great at what they do. They're great at being parasites, but they're lousy at doing anything else.
Yes.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, and so this illustrates the point you were making, Sal, where the organisms that are highly specialized, they may be great for them as a parasite, but guess what? If their host goes to extinction, if they're in some rare bird somewhere, and the rare bird goes to extinction, guess what? So do the parasites, because they're hyper specialized to that particular bird, and they've dumped the rest of their genome, so they literally can't adapt.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me, this is how I now that I've had a chance to think about it, because I was actually there to see Jake Hebert on Milankovitch theory about the geology stuff. And Randy calls me into his office and we talk for 2 hours. And other researchers, the ICR is waiting to see me. And so it kind of really caught me off guard. And then when Dr. Randy said he's kind of he's against Behe's last book, I'm just like, oh boy, how do we handle this? And I don't want to be confrontational. We can be, I'd say, formalists and say this is going to be problematic.
You confrontational, Sal? That's never happened in the history of the world. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you should, yeah. What was that? You said me not being confrontational or something?
Confrontational? That's never happened, ever.
Yeah, like me and Donnie Budzinski.
Oh, I'm not going there.
Yeah, that was the worst thing about he and Raw Crap were on the side chat. I'm just like, oh man, ruined it all. Anyway, but it's going to be problematic. It's like, well, how do you know that gene loss isn't adaptive? I'm like, okay, I rethought it now. The question is not, and we have to be, first off, I actually looked at, first time in my life, first time in at least all of my time in biology. Can you leave this in 8 years? I never looked up the definition of adaptation in the dictionary. Okay, because the definition in evolutionary biology is reproductive success. But
what's the junk definition?
For the record, okay, so they have a habit of evolutionists equivocating meanings because that's how they get their theory to work.
Yeah.
And so adaptation.
Definition of adaptation. Yep.
Dictionary. Oh man, it's just like the word gay.
Oh brother.
it's just been abused from its original meaning. How about adapt? Okay, here, the word adapt. So there's the word adaptation, which I presume shares the same root word as adapt, or maybe even adapt is the root word.
Adapt is the root word.
Okay, adapt. Make something for new use or purpose. Become adjusted. So I like this. For a new purpose. The word adaptation doesn't have, the word adapt is best suited, is very well described when you have a purpose in mind, a goal. So evolutionary biology has tried to use the word adaptation. They redefine it formally in their own gobbledygook speak. But then they pretend it looks like it's purposeful. And so they've totally muddled everything by using the word adaptation. And it's usually in reference to only a single environment, not multiple environments. Whereas when we engineer something, it's adapted for multiple environments. This aircraft can operate at this altitude, at this altitude. It can taxi on the runway. It's adapted to certain runways.
Sal, I'm going to object to that.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going to object to that is not every engineered design is highly adaptable. Some of them are highly unadaptable. They're highly specialized. And I say this because I come from a background where I worked with some highly specialized machinery that was very temperamental. I worked for a company that made vitamins, and we made some vitamins that were very, very dusty. And I got news for you: that when the vitamins were really, really dusty, those machines didn't work real well. To the point where we had to go to a warehouse and count pills in bottles, like thousands of pill bottles. I got volunteered for this. That's why I know this. We had to go to a warehouse and literally tear apart pallets of bottles and count random bottles to make sure we got the counts right, because they did not function correctly with all the dust in the machines. So some
the machine wasn't well adapted.
Specialized.
Yeah, specialized. But I'm not saying that it has to be adapted to every environment, but it's
I get that. But the machines we worked with, they really only could do one thing well.
Okay, and that's what I was saying is, you could say it's adapted to this environment and that environment. Okay. Just because so in a CET model, continuous environmental tracking, mm-hmm. If you're saying, oh, now it's better adapted to this environment, okay, granted. But what you're really talking about of interest is has an innate capability been now triggered to express itself. It may have had that capacity. I
see what you're saying. Okay.
Right. But anytime you lose a capability, this is about, because this is important, because I think we could say we've either gained or lost capability. What happens in the immediate environment, it's like, well, you could say this or that. You could say, well, it's better adapted now. It's like, well, did we lose capability in the process of this? That's in a way that's irreversible. We can classify that. So if you've actually lost a gene that helped you be more reproductively successful in that environment, you can classify it as an irreversible change, barring horizontal gene transfer.
And horizontal gene transfer doesn't really work above like bacteria.
Yeah. So we can continue this conversation, but my impression is that hey, someone likes our pairings here, you and me. That's pretty scary, because you'd have to be an ultra nerd to really like this.
Well, that's maths. So yes, ultra nerd confirmed.
Oh my goodness. He's a big fan of military aviation history and this channel about big warships, Drakenfell. I can't even pronounce it. Where did that name come from? Yeah. And Perun. Oh my goodness, Mark O'Connell loves Perun. This is really bad. Oh my.
Yeah, y'all need to like see a psychiatrist if you like having me and Sal on the air together, because all we do is talk about stuff that's like way over our own heads, let alone everybody else's.
Yeah. So I'm concerned that the language of CET is conflating too many ideas. It's not clean. And I really like Randy, and I told him however I could be of service, and I sincerely mean it. If we have to argue to get things cleaned up and say, look, this is making my job hard as a Christian apologist, as a creationist apologist, mm-hmm. We have to use tighter terms, and then because I don't want to create a distraction in the community, because all this thing about between Jason Lyle and Randy Galuza, the current head of ICR and the former, I think Jason Lyle was the president of ICR once.
I don't know if he was president. He was the research director, I know. I don't know if he was...
A research director. I'm sorry. It's just, arguing over terms. And this is what doesn't happen so much in math and physics. It's very clear, like you have a mathematical equation, say this is what the equation describes. You don't have any argument. Did you notice there are not really a lot of debates about mathematics on the
I
internet?
guess there are, Sal. Does 2 + 2 = 4, 5, or whatever you want?
Okay, we're not gonna...
You walked right into that. I'm sorry. That's not a serious debate. That's a bunch of clowns. That's a bunch of clowns debate.
Yeah. So, and that's, you know, that's where that's why it's very alien to me when I get around philosophers. It's like they thrive on arguing on the meaning of words. I'm just like, this is crazy. And I realized, hey, you know, one way to perpetuate something is your goal is to never have agreement on what's true. And you can just argue forever. And that's the discipline of philosophy. I know that's mean. I was talking to someone yesterday and I said, or the day before, something like that. I said, why don't you just pose this question to a set of philosophers? What is truth? You know, Pontius Pilate said, what is truth?
Well, the problem is, Sal, the number of definitions you would get would be n + 1, the number of philosophers in the room.
Okay, I'm sorry to go on this tangent, but this is where I'm concerned about this whole CET thing, you know, because, all right, so for example, it's very clear to say if you've basically had a gene loss or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there might be some ambiguous ones, but you know, you could say gene loss, you've lost versatility. And Randy said, you know, because I pointed out the experiment by Lenski, and he said, how do you know that that's not adaptive? I'm just like, okay, I mean, that's a good question. How do you know that wasn't designed for it to lose genes? Well,
in bacterial populations, I might actually buy that.
Yeah. Oh, agreed. And that's a good point, because I see it, these pan-genome diagrams. Mm-hmm. It was Andrew Fabich who told me that, actually. He works at a certain school, you know which.
Well, I know where Fabich works, yeah.
No, nothing on Andrew. Oh my goodness.
Fabich is a nice guy from what I understand. So
it's his association with another professor there.
I'm saying
I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I love Andrew Fabich, but when he was at Liberty University, he said, hey, this is, you know, he was pointing out what happens to bacteria that when they migrate from certain, you know, when they parasitize different hosts, or they migrate, they lose genes, or they may be disposing, or they inactivate them. So I'm in agreement with you here. Mm-hmm. But see, one thing, the definition of adaptation is so all over the map, I'd rather not go there. You can say you have lost capability. That is objective. Adaptation is not a very objective term. Capability is an objective term. So if you have the ability to see, to hear, catalyze a reaction with a certain enzyme, that is objective. Adaptation is such a mush word. You know, so that's what I have to say. And so to the extent we have theories that talk about adaptation, it's like talking about theories of speciation. I just want to run. It's like, you have to first define the species. Like, oh boy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you walk into a room of biologists, you have n + 1 definitions of species.
Exactly.
That's not my words. That's an actual professional in the field.
Okay, so how about adaptation? You see where I'm headed.
Right,
so to the extent that I'm hearing about, you know, how do you know that this isn't adaptive or what? It's like, no, please don't go there, because this is too hard to define. We can say objective measures. Can you see? Is the light focused? Geometric optics. Can it sense electric fields? This is very tangible. Mm-hmm. This is, you know, trying to conflate it with adaptation. I'm just like, oh man, okay, I'm giving you my personal bias here. This is a minefield. if we can avoid terms like that, we'll get along better. So, because the idea of gene loss is very important to the creation evolution controversy, because it also kind of, the flip side is how do genes originate that are radically novel, the major families of the protein orchard. So this is creating a fight I wish we didn't have in the creationist community.
I mean, yes, I think there's a point to that. But at the same time, like if we could actually disagree, like decent human beings, and not tear each other's heads off over it, it would be a discussion worth having. Problem is, I'm not sure we can do that.
Yeah. So, well, you put forward the interesting question. You asked Dr. Sanford about CET, and he kind of like, this is a discussion worth having. I'm just like, yes.
Oh, I knew he was going to do that. After I asked the question, I thought about it, like, there's no way he's going to actually come out and endorse it or reject it one way or the other, because it's too political. It's too many people get mad at him if he says one thing or the other.
And really, in defense, he's kind of like me. It's like, this isn't, this isn't anything I want to work on. Yep. He did acknowledge there are design.
I'm not asking him to wade into that fight. I was more just looking for, hey, this guy is clearly an absolute genius. He knows a lot more about this than I do, so I want his opinion.
And that was valuable. Okay, him not going and endorsing it is still important. I will say this, he's absolutely right. We have to have a discussion on this to clarify it. I mean, honestly, I would like to serve Dr. Randy by saying, hey, I'm all with you about finding new designed capabilities or expressing capabilities. We may or may not call them design mutations, but I do like the idea of the environment being tracked, and then it expresses it in the next generation. I'm cool with that. Starting to conflate it with issues of natural selection, etc., or trying to use it as an argument against natural, this is too difficult. And then, because I was thinking also, there was a paper by Jason Lyle. I've never read it. Mm-hmm. There was some talk about his, they're saying, does he endorse it or not? I like the fact, this is the great thing. Dr. Sanford said, natural selection is a misleading term. I 100% agree.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that, at least not within the community.
Yeah. So is natural selection if someone says natural selection something that causes diversity, I'll say that's asking the wrong question. It's actually funny that people pose questions that are almost nonsensical, because
if anything, I think that the making that statement is actually bunkum, because selection doesn't cause any diversity. It operates on diversity that's already there, even within their own model.
I'm quickly Googling. All right. Answers Research Journal.
I know which article you're talking about.
By Dr. Jean Leitner.
Oh yes, I'm well aware of her articles. I've read all these. Go ahead.
Okay, actually, I've never read it. This is where I'll tell you where I got this. Okay. I thought I heard Jason Lyle say it causes diversity or something. Am I getting that? Am I misquoting him? I feel bad if I am. Sorry.
As far as I know, he hasn't said that, but I could be misremembering. I'll pull the ARJ up that you're referring to and just look real quick. I know exactly which article you're referring to.
Okay, so Jean Leitner says, Unfortunately, the article by Jason Lyle puts a number of dubious and misleading claims of its own.
And Weil did respond to that. I don't know if you're aware of that, but Weil did respond to that article.
Lyle's article targets the writings of a single creationist, Randy Galuza, and misses the logical inconsistency in a paper he cites favorably, which also targets Galuza. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I don't mean to be. I don't mean to pour cold water on Dr. Meitner, but if it's a question of whose logic I'm trusting Lyle's.
Okay. See,
now, not to say that she can't think properly, but Lyle makes a specialty of logic. So if it's just a question of logic, now whether his upfront starting premises are correct is another question. But if it's just a question of logic, Lyle is pretty good at that.
Well, all right. I think this is complex enough. I don't want to try to do it all in one show, and it is worth a show exploring this because.
Okay, I just found the section from Lyle's paper that you might have been referring to here. Let me just read this for you real quick. My evolutionist professors taught that mutations, not natural selection, are the sources of genetic diversity. Natural selection simply refers to the death of unsuccessful cases. Now, I don't think he actually has to go that far, but that's what he said. And he doesn't. I don't think that Lyle believes that diversification is caused by selection. If he does, he's wrong.
Thank you. Okay, well, that clarifies it. I misquoted. Apologies to the viewers and also apologies to Dr. Lyle. Very important. This is what's bad if I don't have the reference paper. And can you believe, like, in the 8 years that I've studied this, I've never faced questions like that. Because I'll tell you why. All the terms like adaptation, I just like, can you frame it mathematically? And you know how it's framed in population genetics? It's the one that makes the most. I'm just like, well, not really a lot of insight there,
The one that makes the most. Congratulations. That's real insight.
Yeah. I mean, so I just, being a formalist, I don't like dealing with terms that you can't define well. And what I mean by well,
mathematically.
Okay, so a guy in the United States can communicate someone who in a totally different language, he will understand what you mean. He will derive the same theorems by and large that you will and conclusions. There's not a lot of disagreement. And then
how is 2 + 2 4 or 5?
We have to go back.
I'm just telling you.
But okay, I mean, do you remember when I got evolutionary theoretical genetics in the definition of natural selection? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. It was something to do with a deviation. It's deviations from the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium.
That sounds right, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So if you and I ever, started writing joint publications, I would just say, okay, this is the first problem. It's going to be a minefield, just like trying to define species or define the word adaptation.
Define species? Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. So I would just have to say, okay, this is what we can, okay, with this mathematical definition, you could say differential reproductive success. No, actually, success is teleological word. Sorry. Differential reproductive abundance. That works. But we can also demonstrate that it assuming, going from that assumption, which is experimentally demonstrated, it does not lead to evolution of complexity or well-defined capabilities, new capabilities. I don't want to use the word adaptation. Capabilities. Can it discrete capabilities. Can it metabolize a certain food source? That's very objective. Saying it's starting to thrive and have more kids, it's like,
Thrive. What does thrive mean?
Yeah. So that's what I would say is it starts to get very muddy when we try to say, this is like saying, okay, to change a car, in order to make a car go from a carburetor to have fuel injector, it has to change. Mm-hmm. I can take a hammer and change a car. Therefore, that mechanism is, the insinuation is that mechanism can affect a change from carburetor to fuel injector. But evolutionary logic and wording follows that same kind of equivocation. Plenty of it. It's unbelievable. The whole industry is based on that. And so that's what I would say is, we have to be very, very careful about terms. That's why I particularly like cellular and protein biology. It's kind of brutally evident what is a really new capability. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Oh, look at this.
I am hardly shocked.
I'm sorry to hear that, brother. Oh, by the way, Ryan, when you're of college age, I presume when you get over 18, you're welcome to come on the show sometime.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you'd ever be interested. You don't have to show your face. I prefer you actually protect your... Actually, can I suggest something?
I may have suggested the same thing when I emailed him, but go ahead.
Okay. All right.
Anonymity is a significant positive.
Okay. You got that? So anonymity. At
least until
hey, congrats. Okay, we'll be in touch, all right, brother? We'll be in touch.
I don't know, Sal. Let's see. What is 3 days? I don't know. Do we need a Saturday night birthday stream for Ryan? Is that what we need here? I mean that is it's Saturday. So email us, Ryan.
Yeah.
My malevolent mind is coming up with things now. Sorry, Sal. That was just my immediate
reaction.
I apologize.
Okay, so I think we kind of beat that horse to death. Have to work that out, but I was just reflecting in all my time with Dr. Sanford. We never had these philosophical discussions. Like, what is adaptation? What's a species?
Yeah, I hate getting into the weeds of that stuff, but the problem is you almost have to.
And I think I only had one conversation about species in 8 years with Dr. Sanford. He said, I don't, bacteria, is it really, are there really species? And it's like, I never knew that. And I think he's referring to just the large amounts of horizontal gene transfer, et cetera. I don't know.
Yeah. Bacteria are one of the things that break a lot of species concepts.
So that's the first time I heard it. That was the only time in 8 years. So what did we focus on? We focused on the complexity of biology. Those were the more interesting questions, not these kind of, Paul Nelson was trying to tell me, he said, it's difficult to make overarching theories in biology.
Yeah,
biology, he said, biology is the discipline of exceptions. You make a rule and you're going to find an exception.
Yeah, pretty much in biology, if you make a rule, expect to break it shortly thereafter.
Yeah. Oh, college scholarship events.
Well, good on him. Good on you. Good on you.
Sincerely, can we say a quick prayer for Ryan for his college? Yeah. Okay, Lord, we lift up this college scholarship event. Being able to finance your way through college, especially in these overpriced markets, is important. Please grant him success. And thank you for his ability to be in an AP biology class in high school. That's fabulous. And please grant him skill and ability. In Jesus' name, amen. I have to say, Emory, people like Ryan, students, and Mr. Jetty, and who's a scientist, and Schnoil. Schnoil is a computer scientist. I mean, it's just great having this crew here. It's inspiring to have Christians and creationists, all together like this. And Ray Giordano. Yeah. And then, of course, all the people that are, just in this community. It's very heartwarming. Oh, and there's Godzilla Freak. There's me, laugh out loud.
Hey, not everybody can be scientists. Otherwise, scientists wouldn't have anybody to talk to.
Yeah.
So
we got Mark. Well, people ask me what I do. I said I'm a troublemaker. That's.
Sal, if you're a troublemaker, what does that make me?
Oh, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. I'm sorry to laugh.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So I don't know where we were on that. I was just saying, we've avoided philosophical questions. We were more interested in complexity. One thing that was very close to Dr. Sanford's heart was the ALU elements.
Mm-hmm.
He said that's problematic for creationists. And the day he said that, comes up to me after the meeting. He said, "Sal, can you look into that?" I'm just like, he's saying, I think of anything that would make me go back to being an evolutionist, it's the ALU elements, these transposons.
Mm-hmm.
And he walks up to me. He said, "Sal, that's your next assignment. Can you figure that out?" I'm like, oh boy.
Thanks, Dr. Sanford.
Providently, the papers had recently come out, and it was easy. And he said, "You did a really good job on that. Your next assignment is ERVs." I was just like, Dr. Sanford. And providently, again, it was like within the last year when he made that assignment. And I said, "You know what, Dr. Sanford? If you'd hired me 3 years earlier, I would have been able to do absolutely zero for you. My employment with you was perfectly timed because the questions you assigned me, it just, the answers were right there, just recently published." I mean, yeah, talk about just providence. But yeah, so that's what we focused on. We didn't go, we were talking about these overarching theories. Biology is the discipline of exceptions.
Yeah. And as I said, if you make a rule in biology, other than the law of biogenesis, pretty much everything else breaks.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so if we ever write anything together, or if we exchange ideas, anything with overarching theories or definitions, we're going to get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah, I recognize that we're not exactly going to make. No, Mark, the central dogma does not. It's still a good general guideline, but there are exceptions.
It's been modified. They're like, which version?
Yeah, that's fair too. Which version? Which version? No, the central dogma's gone, at least as a full-blown dogma. It's still a general guideline. It's still what we teach. You teach kids in, high school biology class, but it does have exceptions.
It's not quite as bad as the definition of species, but
no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Not that bad.
I don't know if anything's that bad. there are even some situations now where they've found that like RNA will be used to repair broken DNA. Like, there's all kinds of cool stuff going on there. So,
well, I know why he probably asked it. I've been teaching Cindy Lincoln molecular biology. And almost each show I say, state the central dogma. And so there are various versions of it, and she knows that, so you can either put qualifiers or just, so the approximation is DNA transcribes to RNA.
Who doesn't know anything at all about molecular biology, I don't think there's a problem saying this is a general dogma, because it's mostly true. It's just there are exceptions, like almost everything else in biology.
Okay, so the base approximation is DNA transcribes to RNA, RNA translates to proteins. Yep. But if you want to be more specific, you say some DNA transcribes to RNA, some RNA translates to proteins.
Yes.
But then I started to see all these diagrams that get even more technical. I'm just like, I kind of like the simple approximation, because that got Cindy. She got a lot of mileage just from understanding that, because then I could show videos, because she's been teaching, she's been trying to promote and teach creation science. And like, she didn't really know that DNA is a blueprint for the proteins. And she needed to know. I was teaching her a little bit of the alphabet, and then the for DNA, and then the proteins have a different alphabet. Yep. I recently taught her about what a gene is, and that's also an interesting discussion. What's a gene?
What's a gene, Sal?
Oh my.
I know you gave her the textbook definition, but go in the literature for 5 minutes and you'll find out that definition is all over the place.
I would say that once you get to you could say the mRNA is a nice the messenger
RNA, yes, mRNA.
Once it gets to that stage, you could say, okay, that at least represent the idea of a gene. At that stage, it's going to code. It can now code for a protein without a lot of modifications. There are some exceptions. Oh, that's right. Biology is the discipline of exceptions.
Yeah.
So that was basically our after show we have an hour and a half after show for an hour talk.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Did you have
a lot of good stuff in that talk. If you didn't actually watch the talk, I'd encourage you to go watch it. It's on the Logos Research Associates YouTube channel.
Yes, and I put it in the video description.
Oh, Sal's way ahead of me.
Which reminds me, you have my new email address.
I do, yes.
Address says to, if you send me some of your, material to promote your work, I'm happy to put in the video description.
I will send some of that to you afterwards.
Yeah, you'll save me a step, and I'm happy. So with that, do you have anything? Oh my goodness, we have a diehard here. Don't do that, Schnoil. I'm appreciative.
He's doing the graduate student thing and burning the candle at both ends.
By the way, congratulations. I say this sincerely. Praise the Lord. He got through his exams in computer science.
Awesome.
And I don't know, was this the semester you had quantum computing?
Oh, that just sounds terrifying.
Yeah, that is it's terrifying. My graduate advisor at Johns Hopkins, quantum computing, and I think maybe mercifully I didn't take the class from him, my own advisor. But congrats on getting. Let us know when you graduate, Schnoil. And yes, he said yes. That was he took quantum computing. Wow. So. Did you have any closing words?
No, I think we covered most of what we need to cover. I think we just close it out and let Schnoil go to sleep.
Yes. So I thank you for your following this channel, but please take care of yourself. You could always watch this recorded, but I guess it's nice to hang out live with the gang. So can you close us in prayer, and then I'll play a quick, a short closing credits, and I'll meet you backstage.
Right.
If you could close us in prayer.
Yep, we'll do.
If we could pray for the students and everyone else.
Yes,
too.
definitely. Dear God, our Heavenly Father, I humbly come before you, praising and glorifying you, Lord, for the day you've given to us. Thank you for the opportunity we had to hang out tonight. Thank you for the dedicated nerds who showed up to watch us talk about things that are over our own heads. Thank you, Lord, for the Dr. Sanford and the incredible Christ-likeness and mind that he has brought to the creationist movement. Thank you so much for his passion and his desire to serve you. Thank you for his just thank you for him and the great blessing he's been, and thank you for allowing him to work with us, even though I've never personally worked with him, but even work with us in the community on dealing with these issues and dealing with the problems that are raised within genetics. Just thank you very much for that. And Lord, I pray you'll just bless him, bless his life as it draws toward us slowly towards its close as he's getting older. Help him to be able to have clarity and peace with you as he gets older. And Lord, I pray that you will just give us all here a good rest of our night. Help these people here who are students, not just the formal students, but the informal students, those of us who are always trying to learn something. I pray that you'll help us to glorify and honor you in everything we say and do. And I pray that you'll help us to understand new concepts and guide our minds to the answers that we need to have for the questions that we're asking. And I ask this, Father, in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.